Welcome back to part 3 of the Rusting Hulks on Unfair guide playthrough festival. We can see the state of my current mechs. We've got shield friendly on the pulse mech, pilot has skilled, we got Morgan Lejeune with a guided missile on the jet mech, and we've got Kai Miller with a fully upgraded rocket artillery on the rocket mech, and I'm now considering my next move for my third island. And I believe I choose Pinnacle. Again, because Detritus has a lot of acid and other such things, so I think I will have an easier time doing high damage. And Pinnacle has nasty things like spiders, so I wanted to see if I could just kind of deal with it now before I have to deal with, spiders and Leader Vec on the final island. And also, Pinnacle in general can be real tricky. Pinnacle forces you to do a specific mission. It's the way that the Pinnacle map is laid out. So you're often constrained on choices, and you'll have to just kind of bite the bullet on a single mission type. Sometimes you're lucky and it's an easy one, sometimes you're not lucky, and it's a very challenging one. So with only 3 options here at the outset, I'm trying to look at either cryogenic labs or shielded vaults, because I want to see what my mandatory mission is going to be. And I believe I choose this mission with the cryogenic labs because we've got the cryo mines, and I'm hoping that those can buy me time. And our Op4 is just a sea of alphas. We've got centipedes, moths, bouncers, and a spider. Moths can be really nasty, centipedes can be really unpleasant. Bouncers are bouncers. Probably the least immediately threatening, but they can be problematic when you're trying to juggle all of the other problems. Now, with my deploying here, I'm hoping that I can bait the spider into lobbing its egg onto a cryo mine. That means I won't have to worry about it, and it also will not web any of my units. So with this array, I think I'm only at risk of getting the jet mech webbed, and it would be blocking the Vec advance with the egg. So I think this is a decent way to deploy. So we've got immediately problems with the moth, but as I hoped, the egg has been frozen. We even get lucky with a bouncer getting frozen. So we really only have 2 threats to the grid here. We've got the bouncer attacking the power generator and the eastern centipede. As long as I get out of the way of the middle of the board centipede, its attack will harmlessly hit the back of the map. Oh, and the moth, I forgot. The moth is also a problem. I believe that as I'm kind of testing out my positioning, I will swiftly come to the realization that Kai is the only one that can actually solve the moth problem. I'm going to need to shield the power generator. But at least we can get a moth killed. And then Jet Mech's going to have to take care of the centipede. We can push it out of the way. We will lose a cryo mine in the process, but it can't all be saved. Also, in shielding the power generator, I'm going to have to free the spiderling egg, which is a little bit irritating. But I think because it was frozen, it's not going to wake up yet. Once again, the spider continues to freeze its own eggs. We've got 2 threats to the grid. I'm looking for Kai to kill that centipede for us. However, I might pick a little bit more of a daring positioning, yeah. What I wind up doing, this is, I'm not sure if this was the best solution, because I could have killed the centipede, bump damage would have destroyed the egg, and then I could have used the pulse mech to push and kill the leaper. It just would have freed the frozen bouncer. For whatever reason, I decided not to do that, and instead I get Kai stuck. Now, this was, you know, I probably should not have done that. I should have been leaning on the side of giving Kai the ability to still move around. But instead, I commit to this weird course of action where I freeze the centipede, I keep the bouncer frozen, and I'm looking at the centipede friendly fire, and I realize that the centipede could potentially be damaging and killing this spider. And see, I'm going to be freeing this bouncer anyway, so I think this was ultimately a misplay. I don't think I'm punished for it. I think I'm somewhat lucky. But this is definitely a do as I say, not as I do situation. If I was replaying this, I think you would have been better served killing the centipede, freeing the bouncer, getting a little bit of bump damage on the bouncer, and still wind up killing the spider. And then you wouldn't have your rocket mech stuck behind a frozen centipede. I luck out a little bit, though, in that the Vec decide to target my mechs. We've only got 1 threat to the grid here with the centipede once again. And I think the best I can do is body block it with the pulse mech. The bouncers will freeze themselves / block spawns for me, which is nice. Stroke of good luck there. I just make sure to heal myself so that I don't take extra damage from the acid. And then Morgan can at least get themselves charged up and get out of harm's way. And we will face our final turn with a (3v3), but we're handicapped with our rocket mech stuck. And it turns out to be the Scion, so it's more of a 2v2, so I was very, very fortunate here. You really can't rely on that kind of dumb luck to help you through an unfair playthrough, but I was not punished for my silly decisions. And we get through that mission unscathed. And now I get to see my doom. I get to see the unavoidable mission on Pinnacle. And unfortunately, our luck does not continue. This would be the darkest chapter of the Rusting Hulks trilogy. This mission, Venting Field. It's really nasty. We've got lots of problems here. Destroy the shield generator in general is a problematic mission objective, because everything is shielded. Not just the buildings in your mechs, but all of the enemies are shielded, and that means it's going to be very difficult to kill them. And because we can't reliably kill them quickly, that means the block Vec spawning mission objective is almost guaranteed to fail. It's starting us with 6 Vec on the field, and we're not going to get any new spawns until we can thin their numbers. So a perfect island reward by this point is basically a done deal. We're not going to be successfully completing this mission. I'm going to do the best I can, but keeping the grid as undamaged as I can manage that's going to be the, the main desire. We're also really unlucky with this map seed in that the robotics lab is just smack dab in the middle of all the FEC. It'd be great to not lose the robotics lab and get an extra power core. But we've got problems. We've got a spider, which is restricting mobility, restricting tactical flexibility. Both of the centipedes decide they're going to attack the robotics lab. I might have to do some skipping ahead of time on this mission. I do spend, I think, a lot of time trying to observe my options, see what the best angle of attack is. And spoilers, but I think it's mostly for naught. This is a good example of just sometimes unfair mode is unfair. I'm honestly not sure if I could have done a better job on deployment. None of the other VEC really took any sort of bait. The centipedes just decided to focus fire on the robotics lab. The enemy will attack the shield generator on their own, but again, they didn't do it. And it was sort of a benefit this round, because as soon as the shield generator goes down, all of the shields are gone. And you can at least sometimes have, you can buy yourself a little bit of time. Yeah, this was not great. Yeah, I smoke the spider egg, and I try to maintain the shield on the grid for where the Alpha Leaper is. So I'm going to be, I'm just going to have to tank the robotics lab getting hit. Nothing I can do about it. The problem is I miscalculated. I thought that the spider eggs would not hatch in smoke. I think I was wrong. Because indeed it does hatch. And, to add insult to injury, the newly hatched spider gets a shield, even though the egg lost its shield. It's pretty brutal. Spiders on this mission are just a recipe for trouble. Once again, we get a mech's mobility blocked, and they really, really, really don't like the robotics lab. At least get some kills going. And thanks to the acid, I can at least defend the robotics lab for now. But we've made no progress on blocking Vex spawns. I can at least dump an egg in the water. But we are now starting to lose shields. So finally, the enemy decides to attack the shield generator. And due to the timing of it, if I just leave them alone, I would be okay as long as I kill the spiderling. So the centipede would hit shielded buildings. But instead, I go for a 2-for-1 with the rocket mech. I decide to clean up that spiderling, kill the leaper. And then I believe I elect to destroy the shield generator on my own, just to squeeze out a little bit of rep. Maybe that wasn't the best decision. Maybe I should have just accepted a total mission failure here. The regen scion is causing me problems. So as you can see, we're already on the last turn, and I was only able to block a single Vex spawn. I had no hope of completing that mission objective. And as a final act of spite, I face the unpleasant decision of being incapable of freeing the rocket mech. Without... I could have freed the rocket mech by shooting it with the jet mech, bumping it out of the way of the egg. But then, I'm not sure that Kai would have been able to do anything, because Kai takes a speed penalty when she takes damage. And we've got 2 enemies targeting the robotics lab. So I believe that the best I can do is body block the centipede, because I can't afford to take 4 grid damage. That would just be catastrophic. Kai basically can't do anything, so I elect to kill the Alpha Leaper and hope that the 10% grid defense will hold when the Spiderling attacks the robotics lab. You never want to be in a position where you're really relying on that dice roll, because it will never trigger when you want it to. And indeed, we lose the robotics lab. So we squeeze a single rep out of this mission, and we lose 1 grid power. Not terrible, all things considered, but definitely a blow. And I unlock the rest of the island, so I can now at least have more choice on my next mission. It would be great to top off the grid, and also be nice to get as much rep as I can, just to try and, salvage. So yes, there are lots of different missions available, none of which look terribly difficult. I'm just trying to optimize my chances of success. I think I go with this one. Destroying the Vec egg sacs is usually not too terrible. And I think part of my reasoning behind it was, with all the centipedes running around, there was a good chance that the centipedes would wind up just destroying the egg sacs for me. And if I'm successful in this mission, I can at least repair the grid a little bit. So we've got 2 centipedes, a bouncer, a spider, and the regen scion. Honestly, one of the less horrific op-4s I've seen at the outset on one of these pinnacle missions. You can see me trying to position mechs in front of the eggs with precisely the idea I was talking about before. Trying to bait the centipedes into attacking my mechs, so then I can just move out of the way and they will complete the mission objective for me. You have to be very careful about deployment when spiders are on the field. And we commence the mission. We've got another time pod. Or maybe this is our first time pod, I don't remember. I will have a correction card shortly. So Jet Mech is webbed. We've got 2 Vec attacking the coal plant. And one of the centipedes was playing nice, and will destroy the egg sac for us. I kill one of the centipedes. get a little bit of bump damage on that spider. Then I decide to protect the coal plant as well as just get an extra shield on another piece of the grid. A sort of preemptive decision. And rather than killing the spiderling egg, I opt to block a spawn. So we will have 3 immediate problems on the next turn, as well as the spider continuing to cause irritation. I'll have a bouncer, a centipede, a spiderling, and that rooting, tooting spider to deal with. And I get double webbed. Whoopsie daisy. I think in the name of vengeance. Yeah. Clara and the Pulse Mech can defend both buildings. They'll just be taking damage from the Centipede's attack, as well as, probably tanking a Spiderling hit. Trying to see what I can do. Notice that I get a little bit bamboozled. The green acid ice I mistook for spaces that I could move to, so I attempt in vain to move the Pulse Mech multiple times, hoping I could push the egg out of the way. So I just kill the spider. Maybe not tactically the best option, but at least I don't have to deal with that spider anymore. I elect to kill the Scion. I'm not sure if that was the best choice. I maybe should have just taken out one of the Spiderlings. It would have just been replaced by a fresh Spiderling, but the Scion wasn't really contributing anything. And now we have functionally a 6v3. And a really tragic course of events here. 3 Vec have elected for the Pulse Mech to die. I can at least kill one of the Spiderlings with push damage. And get some shields up, but things are looking grim. I could have killed the Moth with the Rocket Mech. The Pulse Mech still would have been doomed. But I think I could have maybe saved a little bit of grid damage. Instead, I opt to do a 2-for-1, kill a Spiderling and complete a mission objective. Oh, I guess with the Centipede's attack, that grid building was just going to be taking damage no matter what. But we will have to give a fond farewell, a salute to Clara. That skilled pilot. They put in really lots of work saving the human race. But unfortunately, I was not able to see a way to save them. And then the game on the final turn, again, perhaps taking pity on me, only has a single threat to, or 2 threats to the grid, rather, but I can at least handle them. We don't take any further catastrophic losses. And we have plenty of pilots in reserve to take the place. It's just a shame, because skilled was great to have in the Pulse Mech. That +1 speed, +2 health was just phenomenal. But we're losing pilots, we're losing mission objectives. We're losing grid. Things are going rough here on the third island. We get the repair field passive, which I don't think I ever wind up even using. I equip it because why not? It doesn't cost me anything. I think I put Steve in the pulse mech because they just need 1 more XP to level up. And you never know, maybe they will get popular hero and they could be sold for big cash. I've got 1 more power cord to play with. I believe I wind up spending it on the pulse mech. I have learned my lesson. It's time to invest in shield self. And now I have to consider my final mission before the boss fight. I believe the mission at cold storage is the best play. Freeze and defend both robots is usually pretty player-sided because you've got 1 extra friendly unit, and it is capable of freezing, which is very powerful. Got a spider, a centipede, the 2 robots, and the regenerator scion. I tried to deploy in an attempt to either bait the robot or bait the centipede. Since the robot goes, I think, first in the initiative order, I thought that I had pretty decent odds of baiting the robot's attack. And I do. I'm lucky. Our second time pod spawns. So I can freeze one of the robots and protect the grid that way. Easy peasy. That just leaves the centipede to deal with. I can get the scion, or get the time pod and shield both buildings. And I can kill the spider. Yes! You love to just immediately kill the spider. We've got a pretty decent first round. I think I elect to just block a spawn with Morgan and put some damage on the centipede. Some of which will be healed, but it's better than nothing. No more spiderlings. No more webbing. We have a decisive action advantage on this round. So I'm basically guaranteed to freeze the final robot, and that will free the freeze tank up to help me wrangle the enemy. Kai is a little bit out of position. I think I could have positioned the pulse mech like right at the end of that grid building intersection. Oh, I wind up just doing the same thing. Okay. I think the thing I was concerned about was, yeah, I wanted to give Kai a push so that they could get in range of the centipede. The thing I'm worried about now is putting the smoke on the freeze tank. You can see me desperately wrangling the UI, trying to see the language on the storm generator passive. What I was worried about was that it would damage the freeze tank. It actually just harms enemies. It will leave friendly units unharmed. So even though I lack complete confidence, I will smoke the freeze mech or the freeze tank and just kill the centipede. Hooray! And then I kill the scion. I'm not sure if that was the best choice. You can just leave it alive. It will count against the game's calculations for how many spawns it wants to make. And if it is not otherwise bothering you, you can just kind of leave it to float around. Fortunately, frozen enemies also, I think, messes with the algorithm for spawn. So I'm still in pretty good shape. We can kill the bouncer and keep Morgan's boosted chain going. And note what I'm doing here with the spawn blocking. I'm trying to just choke it. It's a good decision. It just means that any enemies that spawn here at the final round will be really constrained because they can't just automatically move past my units unless they fly. So we are basically keeping the, this final Vec from causing any problems, and indeed we can just clean it up clean. So pretty painless. This is a good example of the freeze the robot mission going, more player-sided. And I believe in my Riftwalkers playthrough we had a freeze the robots mission that was a little bit goofier than this one, but was still ultimately a success. One more power core, and we get 2 promotions. Both Kai and Morgan get conservative, which is a little bit disappointing. We don't have any limited use weapons, so it's kind of a waste of an XP slot on both of them. But ultimately, they are both still so useful with their ability to get damage boosts that I elect to just keep them where they are. Adam already has conservative and is kind of half useless, and Ralph just has invulnerable, so, he's just kind of there. And we have our final mission against the Centipede Leader. And this is perhaps the lowest point of the playthrough. This goes real rough. We've got 3 centipedes and a spider. And we've got the regen scion, which will make any attempt at focus fire that much slower. I think what I was banking on was, with this many centipedes in play, I was assuming that the map would just become absolutely lousy with acid, and that I could rely on acid to get a quick kill on the Centipede Leader. And I was not so fortunate. So I can only really realistically bait one of the attacks harmlessly. But the Centipede Leader cannot resist. I can just move out of the way and its attack will be ineffectual. But then the other 2 centipedes will directly attack the grid, and we've got webbing. We got problems. So I body block and shield the grid with the pulse mech, so I can ignore the other centipedes. But then I could have committed to attacking the centipede, and I probably still should have done that, because I could have killed the spider with the rocket mech. Or I could have committed to just killing the Centipede Leader and not having to worry about it anymore. But I think what I wanted to do was kill the spider. I really didn't want to deal with the spider. Then I kill the Scion. I think this was a misplay. Leaving the Scion alive, again, would have taken up one of the spawn slots, and it wasn't really harming anything else. I think that I could have handled that first turn better, and oftentimes your first turn will determine the flow of the rest of the mission. So we still have 3 centipedes to deal with. And we've got a new leaper in play. Yeah, on that first turn, there were several other things I could have done. I could have tried pushing the Centipede Leader into the fire of one of the Alpha Vec, or Alpha Centipedes, both to damage it and get it covered in acid. So instead, I wind up kind of just focusing on defending the grid, which is good. I can at least keep the enemy numbers down, and I can body block with the pulse mech. And I can keep, newly spawning Vec in. I can keep them covered in acid, which is nice. But we still are not doing a lot to solve the problems presented by the boss and this other centipede. Finally, it coats itself in acid. As I said, this place is just going to become a mess. And it's interesting that the centipede leader it very rarely attacked the grid this time. All of its backup dancers were attacking the grid. And because of that, I was so focused on, trying to defend the grid that I was just ignoring the centipede leader. And I think part of my reasoning also was that I had already failed my perfect island reward here. So if I didn't, if I left the centipede leader alive, I was just losing a rep. It wasn't the end of the world. Man, I can see a lot of things I could have done better. I could have, pushed the centipede into the path of the centipede leader's attack. I could have blocked a spawn with Kai and then killed the leaper. But then Kai would have taken damage from the spawn, which is bad. And I would have taken 1 bump damage as the leaper was destroyed. I didn't like the look of that option. I couldn't just kill the centipede alpha, because then Kai would have been killed by the centipede leader. So I elected to smoke the centipede alpha. Here on our final turn, we've got a 5v3, which is never a good position to be in. Just 2 bouncers. Then, of course, Pulse Mech gets restrained. Pulse Mech is, of course, in no immediate danger, because the centipede leader will kill the alpha leaper for me. But that leaves me with only 2 mechs to try and defend the grid as best I can. And I don't think there was a perfect solve at this stage. I think my best bet was to just leave the more northern bouncer to do a little bit of bump damage to the grid. Better taking 1 damage than 2. And that is the end of Pinnacle for us. Yeah, there were definitely some misplays, but it was a rough op 4, certainly. But we got through it. The grid is not in terrible condition. The main downside is we lost a good pilot, and we don't have a lot of rep to deal to work with. But we do have a backlog of nebulously useful equipment and pilots. I replace, I put Adam back in the Pulse Mech because, might as well keep the experience going. Adrenaline isn't a terribly useful trait on the Pulse Mech, which doesn't get a lot of kills typically. And then my available equipment here is, 2 okay-ish brute class weapons, Grid Assault, which is a pretty decent weapon, and then Refractor Laser. A notorious run changer. Extremely useful, extremely powerful. I see this. I know that I have Kai. I know that I have Kai with a bonus reactor, even. So I can soak the penalty of using an off-class weapon. And I think that it is time for me to start altering the identity of the Rusting Hulks. I believe by this point I have kind of shown you, the strengths of the squad as it is. But we've got a run to win. We've got one more island and the volcanic island ahead of us. And when you have Kai and the Refractor Laser, and you're playing on Unfair, you should not say no. It's time to change the rocket mech into the Refractor Laser mech. So if I'm getting rid of the rocket artillery, I think it's also time to get rid of Storm Generator. Enemy health is just too high. We're facing basically nothing but alphas and leaders for the rest of the game, so that chip damage is just not going to make a difference. So I sell those two items to easily afford the Refractor Laser, and I can still buy 2 power cores to fully equip it, get it online. I do briefly consider selling aerial bombs, but I think I keep it just as, an option to have. And I can also have, just have a little bench of pilots in reserve in case I need them. But there is Refractor Laser, off class, but otherwise fully powered up. And I do invest in movement on the rocket mech because all it can do now is damage. So we really need its ability to reposition itself to maximize its destructive potential. I've got 1 spare core left. I don't see the best place to put it yet, so I think actually I belay the decision as we wrap up the 3rd island. We've got Detritus Disposal ahead of us, once again our final island. Banking on a easy Detritus as an easier 4th mission, or fourth island. So I invest in a self-shield for the Pulse Mech. I will see you next time. Like and subscribe.